on in. We got kind of a fun one tonight, I think. There should be some good banter here, and you guys should walk away with I think and it's more than three tips, right? That was we didn't want to overwhelm people, but I think we're gonna give you more than just three things to help you navigate this whole deal. So give us just 30 more seconds before we do some quick introductions and housekeeping stuff, and we'll get rolling.
Open up the chat, everybody.
Yeah, tell us where you're at.
Yeah, go in the chat and tell us where you're at and what's the graduating class of your child from high school. Just so we can see who we have on here. You should be able to just pop that in the chat.
New
There's
Jersey, Peggy, right out of the
front and
gate.
center, Jersey, as always.
That's right. Always a
So we
leader.
got a Seattle, very nice.
Yeah, all New Hampshire.
And my neck of the woods. Got Minnesota. We got a Midwesterner there.
Our nation's capital, Minnesota, Midwest getting hot, South getting hot. Okay. Always very well eclectic group geographically, always, which is always fun.
Yeah. So a couple housekeeping items. We are recording this, so you will get a recording. So if you want to show your kids, your spouse, or you get distracted at some point, no problem. You will get the recording tomorrow. So we're all good there. We like questions. So if you have any, definitely put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. We'll be looking exclusively in the Q&A. I mean, we will see the chat, honestly, but it's one place to look. Plus you can be anonymous. So if you want to ask something that you don't want your name attached to, it's not a problem. You just click that little box. So put your questions in the Q&A and this will be recorded. The other thing we love to know, and it'll be interesting, I saw like a couple 24s, but let us know if you're new, this is your first webinar, or you've been around a couple times, or if what we affectionately call our groupies, people that come on, over and over again. So just put that in the chat so we know what kind of group we have tonight. And we love our new people. Welcome to all couple news. Love the new people. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah, welcome for sure.
Yeah, this is we figure we have more new people here. So we're an acquired taste. I'll just tell you that right now. We like to make it
Don't give up
fun.
on us.
Yeah, we like to make it fun. And, it's paying for college, and all things around college tend to be kind of stressful. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be that stressful. And I'm saying it as a professional, but also as a mom. I have twins and I've been through this. They're done, but I got through it without too much stress, right? So kudos for being here. There's 25s, 26s on here. It's not too early if you have a class, you have a rising junior next year. And rising seniors, you're right in the thick of it. So now is the time to really start understanding all this stuff so that you can kind of walk along with your child on this journey, and not be behind the 8 ball, basically. So
Yeah, just quickly, my name is Matt Carpenter. For those of you that are new, I'm just north of Boston, and this is class 2025. Is especially, I love all my classes, but extra special. It's a 20th class that I'll kind of shepherded through this process. So, which is amazing. And class 2024 has hopefully stepped on. I hope had a harder path than a lot of you guys are going to experience. I don't know if you kind of heard from some of your friends and colleagues what a disaster the FAFSA kind of continues to be. So hopefully they've taken the brunt of that so we can have it be a little bit smoother, right? There's always going to be anxieties and stressors involved with this process, which makes sense. I say it every day. It's your kids and your money. No kidding. That's pretty provocative stuff to be front and center all the time. But to Peg's point, I mean, there's a right way to do this. There's a correct path, and we really pride ourselves on being the ones to help people find their right path, right? And kind of shepherd you through this. We've done it many times. We love doing it. And yeah, that's what we're here to do. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, what we want to do today, and we've done this before, and we think it's worked out really well, is just be a little interactive here. So, if somebody wants to raise their hand and just share with us, we can turn on your audio. You don't have to be on video if you don't want to. Just to share where you are in this, like what's keeping you up at night, why'd you come to this webinar, like what sort of stuff are you trying to learn? So go ahead, you should be able to raise your hand, and then we can just open up to somebody if they want to
Yeah,
share.
our thought here is number one, whatever you're worried about, or wherever, if you feel like you're behind, ahead, wherever you are, we can say for sure you're in a similar boat with other folks here. And, I think it's helpful to say, well, this is what I'm thinking about and talking about in my household, because we can kind of expand upon some of the questions that are most, top of mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Okay, somebody, here we go. Amber, I'm gonna turn you on so you can share. All right, there she is. So Amber, why don't you just tell us as much as you want to share, age of your child, anything about your family and what's keeping you up at night.
So our daughter's getting ready to graduate. She's a senior, and this is our first experience for college. My husband and I, neither of us went. So, and I feel like we're just really behind. Like, I don't want to let her down, but we're just kind of like the FAFSA has had its own issues. I'm not even sure that we've heard back from them at all. Like, and if so, right now we're just looking at the schools saying like, we can pay work study and we can pay our own loans, but it doesn't look like we're getting any. How do we know like what we're getting from the FAFSA? Um, how soon do we have to decide on whether we're doing the work study with the school?
well, you know
We know
what, Amber?
nothing.
I'll tell you what, Amber. You might feel behind right now, but you're actually a night early in terms of the best content for you, right? Because tomorrow night, Peg and I are going to be presenting on for the class 2024. Here's what you should be doing right now. Here's what to do if your FAFSA hasn't processed yet. Here's how to go back to schools and get more money if the initial offer is not going to make it possible for you guys. And we're also going to start to talk about the loan process. So what I would say is that again, for tonight's presentation, we're more focused on 25s, 26 underclassmen, but I promise you tomorrow, that's all we're talking about, is speaking with you directly for the class 24. So my recommendation is show up tomorrow night. It's a different length, but you can either write into support@collegeaidpro.com, or we'll find you and make sure that you know where to find us tomorrow night, but we'll take care of you.
Yeah, but Amber, if you email, like Matt just said, support@collegeaidpro.com, I'm gonna write down your whole name here. But and just say, hey, send me the registration link for the webinar on the 8th tomorrow night, the appeals and borrowing. They'll send that to you and you can get registered.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let's see if Susan, do you have an underclassman?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
So tell us, Susan, what's keeping you up at night? What are you most concerned about when it comes to this paying for college, getting admitted to college? What's going on in your household?
She's
Go.
got herself. Susan, you got yourself muted.
How does that, can you hear me
There you
now?
go. There you
Okay.
go. Yep.
So
All
what I
good.
wonder about is, given how expensive college is, if my son was a great student and he was fabulous and he loved school, then I would be like, I am here to support you. Let's get you to the best one and I will find the funds. But my son doesn't love school. He's kind of a nice kid trying to work hard, So then it really makes me wonder, like, what should be my strategy for looking for a college when how expensive it is, even like third tier college, it's not like they get cheaper. They still stay just as expensive, which might still be a great experience for him and help him in his passage to adulthood. But it's kind of like when you buy a car, you're willing to spend a lot of money for a high quality car. But then if you're spending money for just a just fine car, but you still spend the same amount of money, I just don't know how to approach how to better be thinking about this. And I was wondering about some strategies or things to think about.
That's a great
Does that?
question.
Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense, Peggy. I'll kind of let you go first here before we kind of get into the content, but it's a perfect segue. So awesome question.
Yeah. So you're talking more on the student admission side, and like I kind of have my parent hat on here more than a planner hat. I mean, you know your child. So one, I think the first thing is, it, does your child want to go to college, and do they need to go to college? Does your son have an idea of what he wants to do or what he's interested in? I'd be digging into that, and I wouldn't feel, and I'm speaking for myself too, if I had kids that they wanted to do things that didn't require college, or maybe they weren't ready for college, I would have been the first one to sit down and say, hey, this doesn't have to be the next step. I don't know if that's what you're saying, Susan, but just listening to you, that's something to think about. But also professionals, not mad at myself, but we have people on our team that do this where they help kids. Because I just keep reminding parents, like, they're kids, right? They're 16, 17 years old. I'm remembering when I was that age, I wasn't very mature, right? Because I was still a kid, where there's some professionals that will help kids kind of figure that out. Like, what are you good at? And sometimes what you're good at isn't even what you should study at school, right? What impact do you want to have on the world? Just those kind of questions. So that might be helpful. Actually being May before all this process starts, I think this would be the time to dig in on some of that and think about getting support from somebody who really focuses on the student, because you're right, these schools are extremely expensive, even state schools. Where I am in my neck of the woods, it's over 30,000 in state all in. You're talking about a lot of money, and that's an in-state school. So you want to make sure, you want to just figure out what his next chapter should be, in my mind.
Yeah, and I'll let you pull up the deck, Peggy, so we can dive in. But what I heard was that, look, your son might not be totally passionate about school, or he's still finding his way, like most high school students right now. And you're going, am I going to make this massive investment if he's not all in? I think that's a great way to look at it, because I think you want to be thinking through that lens. What is a reasonable expectation for a return on our investment as a family? And it should be, we're not saying that should be the only thing that's going to drive your search. It shouldn't be, but it's important, I think, to be front of mind, especially at this stage. So I think your kind of hesitation is healthy, right? And we're going to talk about how, as you're building this list of schools, to find schools that are within or really close to your budget. And that doesn't just mean, as you're going to learn tonight, the sticker price, right? Because in most cases, that's the Steving, and we'll talk about that right now, Peggy.
All right. Well, thanks, Amber and Susan, for thanks for raising your hand and sharing. That was great. Okay. All right. Well, let's kick this off. And I see a familiar name is raising her hand now, Matt. Look at the list.
Sorry, Mom.
Mom's raising her hand. Hi,
Sorry,
Donna.
Mom. We got to get on with the presentation.
Hi, Donna.
Maybe at the end, if we have time, you can make a guest appearance.
Yeah, so for our newbies, which a lot of you are, we mentioned College Aid Pro, I think we did. But this truly is our mission here, to end the student debt crisis by empowering you to shop smarter for college. So just like Matt just said to Susan, like that's our jam, really. That's our sweet spot, is really to help you understand this and to hone in on it. And that's what really gets us out of bed every day, Matt and I. So okay, so as you saw in the Zoom when you registered for it, there's 3 areas, and there's more areas than this. Admissions is a huge area in and of itself. but we're gonna offer 3 tips, and as Matt said, other nuggets as well. So let's start with financial aid. So the first thing is that you have to know your financial aid eligibility, or maybe you don't have financial aid eligibility. I'm talking about need-based aid. And that is figured out by something called the Student Aid Index. This is a new term this year. It used to be called expected family contribution. And just to make things a little confusing, what we're finding this year with the change is certain schools are calling it SAI, and then there's another group of schools that I'm sure a lot of you will have on your kids will have on their list. They're still calling it an EFC. So if you hear the term SAI or EFC, different calculations, but they're in the calculation and the equation in the same way. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. And then a big bonus here is, and this is us, because we know what we're doing, really looking ahead to benefit you down the journey. One of the steps is applying to competing schools. So if you have a child that, really loves, Matt always uses this example, like RIT, right? But they don't really like WPI. Like, they just don't. They visited and they don't like it. We would most likely say, hey, apply to both, because we're thinking down the road when you might appeal, and that's a whole nother step we're not going to talk about tonight. Having both might be advantageous. And we're going to talk about something. Matt's going to talk about merit aid in a little bit, and he'll chime in and explain that even more. But those are, it's very, I work with seniors every year. It's like February or March, and I'll say to the parent, what's your EFC or SAI? And they're like, what's that? So I know they just missed out on so much strategy, so many planning opportunities where they've most likely left money on the table. And that's what we're trying to help you not do. Because the key thing here about financial aid, this is another tip, another gem, is that sticker price, that cost of attendance, that expensiveness that Susan was talking about, it's irrelevant, because all these schools are discounting. But it's a matter of how they're discounting. They have something called a cost of attendance, which is all the tuition fees, room and board, books, and travel. That's been going up for decades, as we all know. And if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, the most expensive schools are pushing $94,000, $95,000 a year. It's nuts, right? But if you know what you're doing, you should not be paying that amount. And the colleges are discounting these sticker prices in different ways. They're using need-based grants. So you have to have financial need. And we're not going to go in the weeds on how that's done tonight, but we will talk in a little bit about a free college success boot camp we're doing in 2 weeks, where we will go deep on all of the topics we're talking about tonight. So hold tight on that. We're going to tell you exactly how to register. But there's need-based grants, if that's applicable to your family. There's merit-based scholarships that are based on the student. So it doesn't matter if your family is Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates's kids can still get a discount in the form of merit-based scholarships. And then there's loans, and one of the moms that just spoke mentioned work study. That's another form of self-help. We call it that because you either have to pay it back or you have to work for it. But the key takeaway here, don't worry about the specifics in these 3 buckets as much as that sticker price should not be the guiding force that you decide if it's affordable or not. The net cost is what really matters. And all the colleges do is they take their sticker price, they take that student aid index, and they subtract it, and that's your need. We're not going to, again, go into how do they calculate the SAI. We're going to do that in the boot camp. So you want to hold tight for the boot camp on that one. But it's vital, as we said in our tip, for you to know your SAI. And it's not the same at every school. That would be way too easy, I say sarcastically, right? So, but you got to know that. That's just super important. So Matt, do you want to, I'll stop share here if you want to go in and talk a little bit more about SAI.
Yeah, so you guys got a email from us earlier today. Encourage you to create your free accounts, mycap.collegeaidpro.com. If you haven't done that already, do it right now. And I see a bunch of you have, which is awesome, because we got a lot of your questions, right? A lot of you wrote in your questions. Obviously, we only had 2 of you on air, so to speak, but a lot of you wrote into Q&A and pinged me and Peg. A whole bunch of your questions, probably the most popular one, as it tends to be, is where do I start? We do not know where to start. Here's your answer. Don't overthink it. Set up your free account, because the first thing that we're going to do is tell you your financial aid eligibility. Tip number 1, am I even eligible for financial aid? How much? At which colleges, right? We're going to give you actual numbers, and then we're going to give you some context, right? We're going to tell you, for example, for this family, hey, look, you're not going to be eligible for need-based grants, the free money, at most public colleges, but you will at most private colleges, right? And you're also going to be eligible for merit-based scholarships at some colleges. So this is kind of the foundation that, especially when it comes to the affordability piece, is going to be what you're going to anchor towards as you build out this college list. And something that I think is incredibly important, but counterintuitive, you heard Peg mention it, and anybody that listens to us, you'll hear us say this multiple times, almost any time we're speaking, and that is that most people do not pay the full sticker price. Okay, this is a Massachusetts family. You see that $95,000 is what it costs to go to Amherst College in Western Mass. For this same family, it's going to be more expensive to go to the in-state state school at UMass Amherst, right? I'll tell you something else. This isn't one of these really wonky cases, this outlier. This is how it works for a huge percentage of applicants, right? So it's not, we're thinking about affordability. For most families, the cost of attendance is the 3rd most important variable, believe it or not, which is just shocking, I think, if you're hearing that for the first time. For most families, what's going to dictate your affordability at any college is number 1, your SAI, and then how generous or not they are in terms of meeting need-based aid, or how generous or not they are with scholarships, right? In some ways, like Peg told you how this thing works from a high level, gave you kind of a 101 Cliff Notes. Here's how need-based financial aid works. I just added a little bit more color to that. That's more than you need to know, okay? We want you focused on what these schools are actually going to cost you, okay? And then we got some questions around affordability, right? I think it was Amber that said right at the top, like, or maybe it was Susan. I think it was Susan that said, my kid's not super fired up about college right now. Like, I don't want to spend $99,000 a year. That's what NYU is going to be next year, 99,000. Okay. So as you're starting to look into the future, this is the platform will help you figure out, well, here's what your schools are going to cost you over 4 years. Siblings going in and out with inflation versus your budget, meaning somebody's going to have to borrow X amount. How is this outcome, right? So that's why, again, start here, guys. And then we got a lot of questions around searching for scholarships. A bunch of families said, we're not going to be eligible for need-based aid. If you go to this search for schools tab within your accounts here, if it'll allow me to do so, which stop share. Okay. I can just go say, hey, go show me schools that are close to my house. And I think my kid's going to be more comfortable at a smaller school. And, maybe they're going to major in bio. Again, it doesn't matter if they don't know these things yet, but you can fool around with some filters, and then you can just go sort based on who's going to give you the most in merit-based scholarships, if that's what you're after, right? So for example, maybe, Wheaton College wasn't on your list, but if they're going to give your kid a $40,000 discount, regardless of their aid eligibility, maybe we take a look. So again, while I'm in here, I just wanted to show you what else you have access to, and especially where we got some questions around, what if we have a really high SAI, how do we go find merit? I don't know that you're going to find a better resource than that. But regardless, this is kind of our firm recommendation in terms of where do I start. Just get your account created and start banging around in there to get an idea of a specific idea of where your family is at on this spectrum.
Yeah. Because like I said, the SAI, understanding that is the key beginning, and then understanding what that means in these net cost projections, because it is overwhelming. So a couple people have written that. So, you know, take a deep breath and take it in small bites. Just start learning and getting your feet wet. And this software, you can put in 3 schools. You can do some searches. Well, actually, you can't do searches in the free version, but you can at least see your SAIs and the net costs and start to get a feel. It's huge. So that's really where you want to start. So let me reshare here. This was the slide that I should have gone to before I left. So that has the link on it again. Matt put it in the chat, but just mycap.collegeapro.com, just hit get started for free. And once you're in there, you can change. Don't worry if you're not sure about the inputs. You're just going to click profile in the top right corner. You can change everything that you put in, all of your financials. So if you put the wrong thing in, and that's where you can play around with it too and see how it affects things. So definitely get in there, the people that haven't yet. Okay. So now we're going to talk about admissions. So tip number 2 on admissions. So very important to start building a relationship with the college admission counselor. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is yours. This is yours. Sorry, buddy.
Were you at dress rehearsal or not? Yeah. So look, this is something that Peg and I have been very fortunate, I think, over the last couple of years specifically, where we've had more admissions experts on our team. So, which, you know, Peg said at the top, that was never our first language. Obviously, we have worked in the space for a long time. So there's, you know, I think we know a lot, but we wouldn't consider ourselves admissions experts. But working with these folks that have been on that side of the fence, and this is something that Brian Ford, who's a teammate of ours, he was an admissions counselor for a long time at Boston University, at the UCs. He's read over 60,000 applications. All that is to say, he has an awful lot of experience. He's been in these rooms kind of deciding and having these conversations. Which kid is in, which kid is out? Are we giving the merit scholarship here? Are we giving it there? Right. And so we've been privy to that kind of insider information. And because our questions are always like, all right, sometimes it's easy. This kid is obviously in, this kid is obviously out, right? But what about all these ones that seem to be right there? And it just seems like a complete crapshoot of why this one was in and why this one wasn't. It's very hard to determine, right? And it is, especially with these competitive schools, with the amount of applications they get, it's staggering. So it's about doing the small things that can help us differentiate ourselves, that can have an impact on both admissions and ultimately on dollar amounts here. Okay. So as your student is building their list of colleges, as these schools are coming to fruition, it is mission critical that they develop a relationship with their admission counselor at this college, right? And no matter how big the college is, there's one particular admissions counselor that gets assigned to them. It's usually by region. So if, for example, if your kid knows that, you know, UT, University of Austin or University of Texas at Austin is their top choice, and they're applying from Michigan, there's going to be an admissions rep, or probably multiple admissions rep, you know, at UT. They want to seek out that individual and start developing a rapport, right? Ask meaningful questions, have that be your point of contact. Okay. Because as we've learned, and this isn't just Brian, I'm kind of picking on him because I've kind of heard his examples the most, but every admissions counselor on our team has said the same exact thing, some variation of it, is these kids that, you know, are right on the fence, and all their measurables are about the same GPA, about the same extracurriculars, about the same, you know, test scores if they sent them. So who has the advantage? Well, as they're going around the room saying, does any comments on this kid, on this kid, on this kid? When you have an actual, you know, authentic relationship of sorts with somebody that's going to be on that side of the fence advocating for you, it's a competitive advantage. And the longer that you have that relationship, the more that you can leverage it throughout the process, not just in admissions, but in scholarships as well, right? We're always appealing, right? You know, essentially going back to the college to ask for more money. If I have a relationship with somebody there, that can, and we see this consistently, make a difference in getting more scholarship dollars after being admitted. So to me, again, it's, and this isn't necessarily common knowledge in my experience, we're not just applying to the school, we are making relationships with the right individuals at these schools that we're applying to. Again, gives us an advantage from both an admissions and financial standpoint. And it's just a good kind of smart, good experience for the kids, right? Like, hey, developing relationships for essentially a potential employer or whatever you want to call it, right? This is something that they can and should do for the rest of their lives. Yeah, and the term that you'll hear in admission is demonstrated interest. It is a metric that colleges use to determine, and it'll be part of their criteria, again, from both an admissions and financial standpoint. And essentially what that means is this kid really going to come here? If we give them an admission spot, if we throw them scholarship dollars, is it going to be actualized? Right. And that's a game that these colleges have to play. So when we can show demonstrated interest, it maximizes our odds for both of those things. And again, this is something we can control. Maybe we're not great test takers. Maybe we don't have all the extracurriculars. Maybe we don't have, you name it. All of us can do this with a little bit of effort. Yeah.
All right, I have just a few things that I want to add to what Matt said. Along this vein, I will say personally with my two, there was a college that they knew the counselor very well, to the extent that she did. Some colleges will do interviews when they're in your neck of the woods at a big conference where they have a booth, which you should go to for demonstrated interest and also to learn about the colleges. Or some colleges will tour, like with my kids, like UNC and Emory and another school would hit different big metro areas and have an evening event. Those are the kind of things, if you're interested in those schools, go. Make sure your child puts their name down that they were there, and also walk up, say hello to the person, be dressed appropriately, look them in the eye, shake their hand, have a conversation with them. All these things matter. But if they do interviews, like some universities, an interview is part of the admission process. I'm not talking about that. Those you have to do, which is fine. But these are just like optional. We'll talk to kids. It's not necessarily easy to find out if they're doing that. You kind of have to do some digging. But that's another great opportunity, like Matt's talking about, to get to know that person. And if the person's impressed by your child, they could be the first read of an application. It depends on the school. But all of that is hugely positive. And this one school in Pennsylvania, she knew both my kids pretty well at that point and came out of the interview and said they both should definitely apply. They were chatting with her when she was in town for some conference or something. So if, you got to pay attention to if these schools are going to be in your area for a conference or they're on a traveling thing. Before COVID, schools used to come to high schools and do presentations. That admission rep is going to be doing that presentation. That is a really good reason to get out of class, right? Get out of class, go a little early, stay a little late, have your child talk to that person, get to know that person, So I just want to emphasize what Matt was saying from personal experience. And I've seen other kids do this. It just gives you a little bit of a leg up, and at the same time, you're learning about that school, which is what your child wants to do, to see if going to put them on the list, and then it can help with demonstrated interest as well. So it's really a good tip. Okay, now let's talk about test prep. I guess that was me because Matt's
That's you, Peggy.
When we did our little green room walkthrough, you would have thought I was like, not in the room. Okay, so let's talk about test prep. So some people, I'm sure you've all heard about test optional, right? That test optional actually existed before COVID. So just weren't as many schools that were test optional. And then when kids couldn't actually go take tests, it just blew up. And there are a lot more schools that are test optional. If you've seen in the news, certain schools, mostly the Ivies, have started to back off and say, hey, we're no longer test optional. But test optional means what it says. It's optional. There are schools that don't look at tests, right? Those schools they're test blind. I don't know if that's how they call it, but they don't care. But most schools are test optional, meaning if you take the test and it's a score that matters for that school and is going to help you, and that's a strategy in and of itself, when to submit them, when not, it's not just, I hate taking those tests. Sweet, I've got a free ride here. I don't need to do it, right? It's important to understand, should I be taking these tests, submitting them, and hey, I did it. Should I be doing some test prep? So it's not just a free pass. Hey, I can apply without the test score, so let me do that, because you might not be putting your best foot forward to get in and also to get money. So both pieces. So our advice is to take a practice SAT and ACT, and not a little hour-and-a-half version. And I remember with mine, they kicked and screamed because it's a pain in the butt. It's over 4 hours. But really, they want to get the full flavor. Have your child do each one. And one, obviously, see how they do, but see how they feel. Like some kids will just say, I like that test better than this one. You know, there's science on this, on the ACT, there isn't over here. It's kind of mostly math, but it's under the guise of being a science section. And they're going to kind of tell you which one they feel more comfortable with. And it's probably going to be the one that they did a little better on. So that helps you see that. That in and of itself is a tip. Do they need to do any test prep? And then there's different types of test prep. There's one-on-one, there's Princeton review where you're in a class. So that's what we're talking about up here. What type of test prep matters? This all is obviously tied to admission, but as I just said a minute ago, it's also tied to that second bucket I talked about at the beginning, merit scholarships. And Matt's going to go back into our software in a minute and show you, like, it could mean the difference of getting 15,000 a year in aid versus 18,000 or 20,000, and do the math in your head. That's $12,000 or $20,000 more in your pocket. Even if you get $1,000 more in merit aid because the score goes up, that's $4,000 in your pocket. So it's an admissions play in certain circumstances, and then it's also a financial. So it goes across the board. So let me let you share your screen again there, Matt.
Yeah, and look, this isn't meant to say, hey, if your kid's not a good test taker, too bad, you have to do it, right? Like, we totally get that some of the, these can be really anxiety inducing, and it's just not everybody's a great test taker, and colleges are aware that that's not the end all be all measure of their capabilities, intelligence, any of that. Okay. But there is a strategy behind at least throwing your hat in the ring, right? Even if it's not something that is a strength, and something that we do recommend more or less universally. And if it is absolutely pulling teeth and it's not going to be a great end result, like, it's okay. But anything short of that, we would recommend following those tips that Peg just laid out, right?
Yeah, at least have them take the prep. Like, for example, my daughter, she doesn't do well on these tests, right? So she did the SAT, never did better than the PSAT. And I just said, forget it. Don't even take the ACT. Forget it. Concentrate on your grades, do your other extracurriculars. It'll all work out. You're gonna go where you belong. And she did. And there was no test optional back then at her school. So again, yeah, I wasn't trying to induce any sort of anxiety. That's the opposite. You know your child. We're just saying, my point is, test optional doesn't mean, oh, great, we can just take it off the list, because it might be an advantage for your child to have certain scores at certain schools.
100%, right? And the thing that, again, is not necessarily common knowledge, and just kind of maybe there's another tip here you could say when it comes to test prep, but for our admissions experts on our team, right, they say on average for 90% of the families that they work with, they will send the test scores to some schools, not to others, right? So it's only the outliers, okay, for families in our ecosystem, that we send the test scores to every school or no schools, right? 90%, what makes the most sense is that for some of these schools, we're going to send them, for others, we're not. Right. And obviously that depends on the test score, the student, the college, and other variables within each of those three kind of major buckets. But to Peg's point, now, if you click on any college, right, if you put in any college, in here. Obviously, we're going to tell you what you're going to be expected to pay there. But if you click into it, it's going to show us a whole bunch of stuff. But obviously, as it relates to test prep in particular here, it's going to show us, in theory, geez, was the Peggy, did our technology take our dress rehearsal off today too? What's with you guys? So look at the one thing that we like to feature is that for every college in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're really good at telling you, well, how much is your kid likely going to get. So this is Loyola Marymount, right? A great school out in LA. And it's just a good example where for this particular one of their scholarships, right? If you have a 26 ACT, you're eligible for 12,500. Okay. If you get that up to a 32, okay, you're eligible for $30,000, right? And that is a swing. So, you know, so that is a whatever that is. What did I say? A $18,000 swing, right? Yeah, thereabouts. $18,000 swing a year. So we're talking 18 times 4 years. So, you know, over $70,000, right? And I'm not saying it's easy to bring your test score up 6 points, but this is a good example. And this isn't, again, this is not an outlier. There are tons of colleges, the Loyola Marymount's of the world, where if we bring our test scores up a little bit, it can make a significant financial impact. Okay. Again, one variable, and hopefully you guys aren't hearing this like, oh no, we're not going to get anything if we don't have a good test taker. That's not the case. But it's almost like we are now kind of fighting back on some of the noise that's kind of overcorrected to be like when everybody went test optional during COVID, I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding that, oh, test scores don't matter at all anymore. Well, that's not necessarily true. And again, this is just kind of what we're demonstrating here. And just while we're in here too, some other things that you'll see for every college, the average GPA, the average test scores, the average amount of applicants that are admitted, the average financial aid packages they get. Again, we don't do averages. We have customized projections for you. Average outcomes based on my major at this school. What am I likely to earn, my first year upon graduation, 5th year, 10 year. So we're trying to have as much data in front of you as possible as you're making these big, difficult decisions, obviously. So again, get in there, bang around. We just kind of showed you the tip of the iceberg in terms of what this tool will do for you. But a couple things I want to talk about with next steps here. Tonight's kind of cool because we got a couple of freebies. For those of you who've been with us that have seen us present before, this is atypical for us. Usually we do a great deal, but we got a couple of free giveaways tonight. The one that I'll share, and I'll go back to this a second time, but we are offering a and Peg, if you can share our link, if you want to meet one-on-one with one of us, usually we charge for an hour, and we do what we call kind of like a financial aid inspection. What we've done is we've kind of pared that down to a half hour. We're doing kind of these, I guess you could call them mini inspections, but we're not charging for them. So book 30 minutes with one of our experts, and we will basically take a look, get a professional set of eyeballs on your situation, confirm or deny your financial aid eligibility. We're going to give you 3 kind of best kind of next steps. If we were you guys, this is what we would do. And then we can talk about how we can support you further, right? We have more comprehensive services where basically we call them our wake me up when it's over packages, where families can hire us to take over the entire process from now until whenever your kid moves into the dorm. So if that's a good fit for you, we can go into detail about exactly what that entails and the price points from the financial side to the admission side to both. We can walk through that. That's not a fit for everybody. For some folks, you're just a DIYer. You're all over this stuff. So we'll tell you what resources we have if you're in that category and just kind of help you identify, well, am I a DIYer when it comes to this, or am I somebody that probably needs more comprehensive guidance? So take advantage of that. Book your time now, because we have some deals that are going through basically a week from today until May 15th. Or if you did want to move forward with a comprehensive package, book it in the next week to learn more in your free meeting and take advantage of that promotion. Okay. Here's what should be a no-brainer for all of you. Okay. We do a really comprehensive, what we call college success boot camp. Tonight was like a little teaser, right? Again, we kind of gave you some little snippets for some of the main talking points here. We spend a full hour just on financial aid and scholarships, right? How do you qualify for the maximum amount of financial aid? What are some of the things you can do to reduce your SAI that can make you eligible for more need-based financial aid? We spend a good half hour ish going over, hey, I'm not eligible for need-based financial aid. I'm one of these bubble families. I've talked to a lot of you in chat. What should I do? It's a really comprehensive breakdown, and basically Peg and I are putting ourselves in your shoes going, this is, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, this is what you should be doing. Okay. That's night number two. That's night number one. Night number two is admissions, right? And this is our admissions experts are taking over. These are the top experts. I mentioned Brian Ford, right? He's read over 60,000 applications at these schools. He knows what gets you in and out. He knows what essays stand out. Dan Bizig has been doing this for, I think, 21 years. Something like that, worked with thousands of families. These guys are the top of the food chain, and they're just going to walk you through best practices. Where do you start in building your list of colleges, right? If you feel like you already have that pretty polished, how do you know that it's where it should be, and how do you maybe put the finishing touches on that? And then the last night, JP Schmidt, who's a former director at University of Southern California, is more focused on the test prep piece. So he kind of walks through again in more detail the timeline. Again, best practices, how to some resources, right? Where to send, when do we send, when do we not send? If we know we're definitely going the kind of the test optional route, what should we know about that, right? What can we do to what are some things we can do to supplement essentially? So, really, if you're able to attend this week, and again, it's totally free, you're going to basically be starting your college, process on third base, right? And we got some really cool giveaways that week. We have a really cool kind of like announcement that'll be coming during that week that's only boot camp attendees are going to be privy to. It's not something that we're doing publicly facing for a while at least. And then some really cool giveaways, right? Like deliverables, I should say, like a timeline, a really good timeline. Like, you are here, what should you be doing? What should your kid be doing? What's around the corner, right? Just some really good tips with financial aid, with admissions, some actual kind of deliverables for you guys. There's some other stuff I'm forgetting there, but yeah, and again, this is where you get a chance to ask all your questions and have a panel of experts that are there. So, Peggy, I think you shared this, but again, take a look at this landing page, sign up. Don't overthink this one, right? If you can't make it, you'll get all the recordings. You just got to register. So, yeah, don't over rotate on this one. It's a no-brainer. Share it with your friends, neighbors, anybody else that you think it might be helpful. We're really proud of this. We've done it a few times, and the feedback has been tremendous, and we just think it helps, sets you guys up for success.
Yeah, people were saying, where do I start? It's overwhelming. This is a great place to get it in three days, bite-sized pieces, and you'll get a lot of good information, and I think you'll feel more ready to start the process, basically.
Right.
Yeah, I did. And the link is there. I posted the one-on-one a couple times. I don't know why the bottom of oh, it did work that one time. Oh, Matt did it. When I did it, the bottom of the link did not, and I kept doing it over and over again. So whatever.
Yeah. So the two calls to action here, guys, like one of them, obviously the boot camp. It's like, don't over rotate on that one, sign up and share it, right? At a minimum, you get their recordings, right? Don't overthink that one. If you want to, again, meet with somebody one-on-one, that's kind of I think kind of a unique thing we're doing tonight, where, again, book a meeting where you're going to get some value out of that. And then from there, decide, hey, do I have am I all good? Can I do this on my own with, you know, the free resources that we provide and kind of how dialed in you are with the process? And if not, we'll talk about how we can help you beyond just, again, our free resources all the way up to our most comprehensive packages.
Yeah, that's helpful because, you know, you can, the person who's talking to is an expert, so they'll be able to point out, I'm a planner by background. These are some of your planning opportunities. These are some nuances of your family situation and how this might affect your journey along the way, and point out some insights. And then, just like Matt said, a lot of people, it's a lot. It's a lot to own and do. If you've got a rising junior or a rising senior, you know, it goes all the way through into the summer, right? The senior parents, they're not done yet. They're still going through this process. So we understand the journey and all the steps in the journey. So just like other things in your life, it's super helpful to have that support, that hand holding. And as Matt said earlier at the beginning, you know, it's money and your kids and their future. It's just a lot to take on when you probably already have a busy, wonderful, full life already. So for some people, it's very welcome to have the support. However, we can step in and support you.
Yeah, and something you'll hear us say more than once. Hopefully you choose to stay engaged with us in whatever capacity. But, you know, I think oftentimes, and this is something we'll do actually in the next month or two to the class 2024, we'll say, hey, if you could go back in time a year ago, when you were just starting this process, spring of junior year, what advice would you give to yourself a year ago? The most common feedback we get is, I would have told myself to enjoy my kids last year at home and just kind of focus more on that, as opposed to getting so wrapped up in the overwhelmingness that can be this college process, instead of like, oh my God, they're out of here. And of course they'll be back and all that, but you know, not every day living under your roof. So number one, take that for what it's worth, right? When these do your best to not take that for granted. Easy for me to say, of course. But that's something that we're trying to alleviate or cut into, of like, look at, let us be your shepherd here in whatever capacity, so you can focus more on, you know, enjoying all the great stuff that's outside of just this, you know, challenging college piece here. So I think that's it for me, Peggy. I don't know if you got anything else.
No, I think what I just said before was kind of my wrap up. So hopefully everybody got, as we said, we advertised 3 tips. I think we gave many more than 3. So recordings coming tomorrow. Feel free to watch it again, share it with your spouse. The links are in here. So if you want to sign up for your one-on-one, you have to do that by the 10th, you said, right, Matt?
I think you got to do that by the end of this week. Yes. And
Yeah,
then
that's the 10th. Yeah.
if
So
you-
get that scheduled if that's speaking to you. But as Matt said, at the very least, sign up for our free boot camp. It's really a no-brainer. It's free, it's recorded. So if you're busy, we used to do it in the middle of the day, and we know that's hard. So we moved it to 4:00 Pacific, 7:00 Eastern. I know it's still right at the end of the workday for people in my neck of the woods, but you know, it's toward the end of the day. So if you know it's coming, you can probably plan if you want to be there live. So
Yep.
would
All right,
love
Peggy.
to have
Thank you. Thank everybody else. Thank you to Susan and Amber specifically for
Thanks for
coming on
sharing.
record with us here. Yeah, coming on record and sharing here. And Amber, please tune in tomorrow night. We'll take care of you. And Susan, thanks for your
Yeah, and anybody I put into somebody else, like if somebody wrote in a question specifically about appeals, definitely write to our support, just support@collegeaidpro.com. Just say, I want to register for tonight's webinar on appeals, and we will take care of you tomorrow night. That's a whole night in and of itself. So
Thank you, everybody. Welcome.
all right, have a good night, everybody. Take
Bye.
care.